All right. I hope you can hear me. We'll first start off with that. This is my first time doing one of these in forever. I haven't done one of these in a long time, but we are back, so back. We're doing a little forecast discussion here. I have not much to do right now, so I figured I would hop on and just do one of these. We'll wait for some people to file in. Uh, Here. Let's see, is my chat pull up on here? It does. I want to be able to see that. Sign in here. Oh, it only lets me stupid. Let's see, anybody in here right now? Let's see. Got nobody in here. We'll just wait for some people to file in here. See, this will probably get a couple people here. Hello. Uh, okay, so it looks like audio is working. It's just a little quiet. Which is not too surprising. Okay, so we have a few people in here, so I guess I will start going over different stuff here. So you might see that we don't really have any risks on the Storm Prediction Center's page for the day 4 through 8 risk yet. And that is just because of confidence issues. There's a predictability too low. There is potential too low for Tuesday, but predictability is low for all these other days. We do have mentioning in the discussion that troughing is gonna kind of come in. But oh wait, that's for the midweek. But toward Thursday and Friday, consensus on the kind of increase the risk for severe. First, we'll take a look at the 18Z GFS here. Just to note, the GFS has been horridly inaccurate recently. I'm just gonna show it to show kind of a baseline of pretty much any single model guidance that we have right now. But the GFS has been pretty inaccurate recently itself. The GEFS has been maybe a little bit better. Well, some of the biases that the GFS does have is that it is a bit of a progressive model, so it'll be further east or northeast or wherever the flow pattern is, rather than, oh my gosh, this stupid thing, rather than where it actually would be. So we're just looking at the precip right now. Probably should look at 500 instead. So here we go. We have a little cutoff low that kind of gets into the southern United States here over the weekend. There's supposed to be a risk for some severe storms tomorrow over the southeast United States. And it seems like this cutoff low will kind of translate into the Florida area, give them a bit of a severe risk. We could dive into that a little bit here as well. But then as we get toward Monday, this cutoff low moves and we start to see a pretty low, kind of start to see this trough move in from the western United States here, and it moves eastward. And we see it has a decently strong speed max right here in California with an upper level low that kind of, which is going to help kind of enhance the belt region. And we already see a little shortwave action out here in Texas. Time you have dew points into the 60s and low 70s according to the GFS. So you would definitely have a severe risk with that along the dry line here in Texas and Oklahoma, maybe into Kansas. Looking at 300 millibar, we can see that we don't have a strong amount of upper level support yet, and your main height falls are going to be associated generally to be storms to be actually lifted up. As we can see here, we have a little bit, some negligible height falls kind of coming into the Texas, Oklahoma region, which maybe is going to be enough to produce a storm or two. Let's look at a forecast sounding here just to kind of see the general environment. It is extremely dry, though, at this point. There is a massive EML that is over the region, so you're probably and you would be using up this 3,000 joules per kilogram of most unstable CAPE, which if you look between here, there's a lot of instability between these red and white lines, which is how you get the CAPE number there. And your hodograph would be favorable for some hail, but you might even have a little bit of a too strong of an EML for that even. But as we get into Wednesday, we'll kind of show that here. Your upper level trough does start to arrive. Now the GFS is probably going to be a bit too fast. So maybe instead of the main access region being here, it might be more so like here. And if that's the case, then you're going to be talking about a severe weather threat probably in the high plains, depending upon where moisture gets to, somewhere in here. If it's like the GFS, you're probably going to be talking about a little bit further east of an area, more like here maybe. If we look at the dew point map, we can see the GFS has the dry line way to the east, and that is because it progresses the system along really fast, and it already has that classic lee cyclogenesis in Colorado where you get that low pressure system. There's another low pressure in Montana, and so you would definitely have a severe weather risk further to the north of a solution like this happen. North Dakota and South Dakota having 60s dew points this time of year is usually a pretty good signal of that. Looking at the 300 millibar pattern, you can see that the main kind of jet streak with your left exit region would be generally further north in the northern plains here, up here. If I do it a little bit better, it would come out more cleanly, but I'm not gonna do that right now. The right exit region will be placed over the southern plains, but you're not super far removed from the jets, so you're gonna have forcing. Height anomalies would show that you do have height falls kind of coming into the general region, the southern central plains, and that would be correct looking at the height fall map. Of course, your greatest forcing would be located in Montana, Colorado, Nebraska, up in the high plains here, but you have enough forcing further south that you could see some severe storms on Wednesday, especially with that subtropical jet punching in. Looking at some forecast soundings here in Oklahoma, I do think you're over the afternoon hours. Let's see, what does it do at reflectivity here? So it looks like the GFS is really wanting this to be a high plains event on Wednesday. It has 62 points reaching into Nebraska. We'll pick another forecast setting out over there. Your EML is significantly less, and you actually have a fully unstable profile with 2,000 joules per kilogram of mixed layer CAPE. Hodographs that would be favorable for mainly wind and hail production. You don't have too much deep layer shear. You have a little bit of curvature in the low levels, but you don't have a ton of low level shear overall. You have a pretty dry surface here, so that would result in more disorganized thunderstorm activity with wind and hail. Ourselves if this solution would have happened. We'll go look at the next day here, Thursday. The GFS is Thursday being the bigger day over the Midwest Midwest. Oh, that was a handful to get out. It's taking its sweet time, but we have that occluded low pressure system over North Dakota. You have your warm front attendant with that, generally over the upper Midwest, probably displaced a little bit, but you generally have occluded front in here most likely with your cold front kind of parked further back here. And then you have some sort of another cold front here probably, and then a dry line further to the south in the plains. This look would result you in a severe weather event, probably a severe weather outbreak if this would occur over the Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, kind of this corridor in here, maybe extending into areas further to the east. Really, your highest height falls are going to be up in the northern plains where you have that occluded low pressure system up here. More of that white/light blue tilt, and that would generally be in here. And looking at your 150 millibar jet, that kind of lines up with where we're looking. Maybe a southwest oriented jet further to the west, so anywhere really north of I-80 here would be what we call EML'd, or you would be very dry in the low levels because this 850 mil there, and so you're going to get some very warm, hot air that would just kind of go down to 850 millibars. And if we look at a forecast sounding, I mean, you see exactly that. Your 850 millibar layer here is extremely dry. Oh, I'm using black, so you're not going to see it. But your 850 millibar region is extremely dry, and it's really capped as you have mixed layer SINH of 134, which is very high. Above 100 most unstable, so you have an unstable atmosphere above that inversion, but considering you have 70s dew points and temps in the 80s, usually you would have a lot better of a thermal profile, but because of those winds being out of the southwest at 850 millibars or more straight west, you don't. Now for Wisconsin and areas north of I-30, or not I-39, I-80, that is a different moisture conveyor belt here, kind of transport. Boom, boom, boom. You get that little conveyor belt there. That's going to help you get moisten your low levels and not have a giant EML. You can see this sounding here. You still have an EML. Great. You want an EML for a more sustained severe weather event further to the east normally. You have that EML. It's just eroded. You have 3,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE still, but this time your mixed layer CAPE is 1,000 joules per kilogram higher because you do not have that EML or very, very dry air in the mid-levels that is sagging above that white dotted line in the skew T. You have generally steep lapse rates still with 7s across the board, which will be enough. One problem here is that your deep layer shear is pretty weak because the GFS put the cold front really far to the east nodes here. Again, you're generally looking at an event. Usually you would have it a little bit further south, but because of how low-level jet's oriented, it's going to be further north if the GFS was correct. Get in here. We'll kind of dive into, maybe go a little bit closer in here. But looking at the little event here, you can see the hodograph map kind of shows you where your corridors are. You have one further south if you get storms down here, which is pretty unlikely with this solution. And then you have one further to the north, which would probably have more thunderstorm development. And even though reflectivity isn't a great product, you can see that it doesn't convect much in the Ohio Valley / Hoosier Valley, but once you get north of the Wisconsin-Illinois border, you have a lot more convection, which is because of the lack of dry air and also because of the generally more favorable synoptics. Now, if this solution would happen, I wouldn't be shocked to see a few tornadoes along the low pressure in North Dakota there, and you should have enough shear to maybe get a tornado or two. Actually, your upper level air is not even that cold. Maybe I should have looked at that a little closer. Not too much. Model, this would be for Thursday. And you can see generally the same picture. Have like that big shortwave because we just don't know where that would be yet. You have your upper level low kind of parked up in here. Iowa, Wisconsin, Northwest Illinois here. So generally your favorable synoptics for severe weather would be lying in here for more further south. 850 millibar winds mean on the GEFS, and you have that same problem there. The southwestern flow there, millibar looks pretty good too. You have that low pressure generally right up here with a ton of flow getting kicked into the central United States and that subtropical jet punching further south. Something like this could be bimodal where you do have severe weather in the southern plains with the sub 2 where you had and then you had a secondary area down in Texas while the dry line capped out. So we can look at that right now on the SBC's website so I can kind of show you what I'm talking about because some people who are watching might not know what that event is. The Palmer, so this is April 12th. Once it loads, you have another area of severe weather from Kansas up into Wisconsin. And this is kind of what you can get with a pattern like this. The left exit region producing a lot of severe weather, and then the subtropical jet dune, it's a bit further south, and then areas in between left thinking, what in the world happened? On this day, the storm predictions us, and then they had a moderate risk in out. It was a lot different. Models portrayed a pretty intense severe weather event in Kansas, I believe, and Oklahoma. Yeah, there you go. So this was further out. Actually, this was the first day 2 outlook. You had a large enhance from Iowa all the way down to Texas, but once the first cam runs kind of came into range, the National Weather Service Storm Prediction Center forecasters realized that generally this area wouldn't really see much. Back then, I was thinking that area might still have a shot, but I didn't really know much better. So we can go look into the GFS a little bit further out now. And we can see Friday, this flow just enlarges. You have the subtropical jet again doing its bits with that upper level low kind of sitting out here in the Pacific Ocean. That conveyor belt of flow with pretty moist 500 millibar kind of general temperatures there would help that area out. You have an upper level low pressure sitting in the northern United States with a really sheared out system, and so you'd get a lot of probably have a pretty widespread severe weather day with something like this. But not sure where you would have the more concentrated bits until you get into close range. 850 millibars don't really have much further to the south in Texas there. You have a little bit of flow in the Ohio Valley. You have moisture looking at theta E pretty much everywhere from Texas all the way up into the Ohio Valley. So you would have a pretty decent day for severe storms that day. Just in general, looking at reflectivity, you have a good amount of storm activity. We'll take a little hypothetical sounding here in Texas. Pretty dry out there, more of a wind threat if that would occur. In the Ohio Valley here, we'll go back to 21Z. You can see a sounding here in western, oh, of course. You can see a sounding here in northwestern Kentucky. This would generally favor a wind and hail event. You have a little bit of low level turning, but not much. Mainly more crosswise vorticity. With that photograph being pretty hail oriented, you have a lot of instability here. A pretty moist profile, but dry above once you get in the mid levels. Steep lapse rates here, and overall favorable. We'll look at the next day. We'll get the floater back on here. And this is when the GFS is going to start to get out of its skill range a lot, especially with the progressiveness that the model can have. Here's Saturday. It has a Southern Plains severe weather event on Saturday, but let's see here. 195 be right here. Oh, wait. Oh, I'd go over to the other tab. 195 would be over here. This is at this point. But you would definitely have a severe weather setup over the Southern Plains with something like that. On the 18th, rinse and repeat. 19th, rinse and repeat. 20th, maybe high plains in New Mexico there. That would be the case, New Mexico, Texas. 21st, that would migrate further to the east. And also a little announcement here, I'm going to be going on a chasecation at this point, so a little intense shortwave like this would get me real happy. You'd get storms all over the plains with something like that from Wyoming all the way into Texas. I mean, look at that. That's a chaser's dream, picking off all those dry line supercells. Like, yes, sir. But that's going to be a pretty active pattern. No matter really what model solution wins out here, you're going to see severe storms in May. Mid to late May, pretty much anywhere. If you would have a solution like this, storm chasers would be extremely happy, and probably the general public as well. The chance of life being impacted by these severe storms would be much lower, and the chance of chaseable events would be a lot higher. Be over great terrain, and that low level trough would kind of just sit there and move a little bit to the east. You can see the next day in Oklahoma would be something interesting, but we're getting really far out now, 300 hours, so the skill range is going to be a lot lower. Generally, looking at ensembles, though, this is kind of the range you should start doing that with. We'll look at them for Saturday here, and we see Oklahoma somewhere in here, maybe extending out into Dixie Alley region. Then you would have that severe risk kind of park there and sit there for days, as you can see here. So that'd be a great time for storm chasers to get out there, including myself. That's why I'm pretty excited for my chase period that I picked out. We do start to see that pattern may deteriorate a little bit as we get later in the week, but we would still have strong moisture over the region, so you would still see severe weather. GFS has northwest flow, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not. So you generally see the pattern stays pretty favorable. We'll switch over and look at the Euro now. So the Euro looks a lot different. We'll look at the 18Z run first, and then we'll stop there. And actually, before we do that, if people have questions, just put them in the chat whenever you feel like it, and I'll answer it as we go. This is going to be the 12Z Euro run. And then I'm also going to have another tab where I just individually stop and pull different hours here. Right there would be that tab. Okay, so this is the 12Z run. This is the stop and pull. Okay, got it. Here we are. So the Euro is generally going to be a bit more accurate with its upper level wind fields. There was a study done. I posted on my Twitter account at one point where the Euro and the UK Met were generally more accurate with the synoptics. Mesoscale wise, the UK Met kind of sucks. So Tuesday, this is maybe the first day next week where we see some severe storms. The Euro would probably have a favorable look over the high plains in New Mexico.
if there's moisture out there, Euro says the dry line is going to be in Texas and Oklahoma, so that would not be true. That there wouldn't be severe weather over there. Looking at 300 millibar, you might have a chance at some supercell thunderstorms initiating along that little shortwave in Oklahoma or Texas this day. But generally, you're not going to have that support with the upper level. Well, maybe you have a little bit. We'll look at a forecast sounding here. Let's see what the hypotheticals look like. So yeah, you're not going to get storms. You have too big of an EML or dry layer in the low levels that is not properly eroded and probably so you probably don't have that over the that moisture over the region for long enough. Wednesday, that severe threat moves eastward. You have generally split flow with a lot of affluence aloft, but not a lot of flow over the Missouri Valley. But you probably have a couple targets, one further viable severe weather risks. The northern one would definitely struggle with moisture though, which is what happens. You have 50 stew points up there. It's a little bit too early for something like that to occur. Upper levels, say generally Kansas would be the area this day for severe storms. And if we take a forecast sounding in western Missouri, I'll take one in Kansas too. You can see that generally that would agree. 300 millibar is the way to go there. You would have a severe threat there in Kansas. We can do a little sounding analysis here. Some hodographs are a little bigger than that. Hodograph is right here, the wind shear, but you have a generally strong thermodynamic profile with a decent amount of instability between the red and the white lines, especially above 700 millibar, which is why your lapse rates or the cooling aloft is 7.7 Celsius per kilometer, which is pretty good. Um, a lot of wind shear in the deep layer level, 50 knots is perfectly fine to support supercell storms. So that's definitely a plus for Wednesday. And then Thursday, the Euro has it generally being a Midwest event. We'll look at the 12Z run now for Thursday because uh, the Euro for Thursday didn't go out far enough to really view it. So we'll look at the 12Z run for that. But generally speaking, the Euro on Thursday, look at it over here at 300 millibar. Thursday, this is what we're looking at. We have the Euro is a lot further south with its jet streak on Thursday. So you have the upper more like this. So you would definitely have your higher higher synoptically forced region being in Minnesota, Iowa, something like this, and the Mississippi River Valley. But the Euro, if we look at the point, we stop and point, do the point stops here. The Euro has height falls all the way into Arkansas. So you would have a little bit more of a widespread severe weather threat if the Euro were to be correct. The Euro has low to mid 70s dew points going all the way up into Illinois here. And that's 850 millibar flow is generally generally a bit more supportive the day before for that moisture to get up there. You can see the moisture kind of comes from the southwest Gulf, and it gets pushed and pushed and pushed northward. That there's a lot more of a favorable look for severe storms in Illinois on the Euro. You can see looking at forecast soundings, you do still have a lot of dry air at 700 millibar, which could be a pretty big limiting factor. Not a lot of dry air, a lot of warm air. Sorry. Your point here, you're about 17 degrees Celsius ish at 700 millibar, which is pretty warm. Generally, you want that to be more like 14 or so. Actually, you're more like 12 at 700. 850 millibars where you're a lot warmer. But you still have a very favorable profile for all hazards of severe storms if this were to be correct. Tornadoes, wind, and hail. Generally, probably more in the I wouldn't say that. Lots of instability here in the Euro, a lot more than the GFS, which is a little bit rare, honestly. But you have 5,000 joules per kilogram of most of the stable CAPE, and then 4,500 mixed layer CAPE. And that's part due to the moist profiles that you can see here. 74 temperature, 82 dew point, and measured in Fahrenheit. So that helps out. Your low level hodograph is very curved with a lot of shear. This is what we call streamwise. Because if you take a plot here, you would get that it is pretty orthogonal there. As we move into Saturday on the Euro, we can see another kind of jet streak really starts to play out in California. Saturday here on the Euro, we can look at it. Or no, not Saturday, Friday. This is, oh wait, that's all the way out to Saturday. My bad. Friday, let's look at Friday first in the Euro. Friday on the Euro, look at that first. Sorry for jumping days. Friday on the Euro wouldn't really be too much to write home about, most likely. You would probably have widespread severe storms, but they probably wouldn't, you might have a tornado risk, but she having a 770 knot. We can see that generally you probably would have more of a hail and wind threat. I'll take one at 18Z because it's probably been plowed over by convection. We'll take a forecast sounding here in southwest Arkansas, and we can see that generally you have a pretty strong EML, so you would probably have more wind and hail threat. Decent instability between the red and white lines here. Not great. Your photograph is not very elongated in the low level, so tornadoes wouldn't be a threat here if this were correct. But once we start getting into that Saturday time frame, we start seeing that next wave come in. Saturday on the Euro, not too much, but once we get towards Sunday, we can see that wave start to kind of come in. Sunday on the Euro here, we start to see dew points that kind of get come in here with that Denver cyclogenesis that starts to occur. We have a dry line that's located generally in here with favorable low-level winds to crank that low-level moisture further northward. Sunday would generally be a day that would probably feature some isolated severe storms from Colorado down into Oklahoma and Texas if this solution were to be correct. Probably in here, pending moisture. The next day, on Monday, you would start to see that trough move further to the east. This would also be my first day out in the plains. You can see that you would have a severe threat probably from Nebraska all the way down into Texas this day. Looking at 300 millibar, you can see that you have generally a lot of targets. The more synoptically favored region would probably be in Nebraska, but you wouldn't get moisture to get up there in time. So maybe you would play something like Kansas or Nebraska or southwestern Nebraska, or play Oklahoma along that part of the jet streak. And then as we get later into the week here on Tuesday, we can see that jet streak tightens up and it starts to move westward. And we can see Oklahoma, Kansas would be the main play that day if this Euro run was correct. You would have backflow flow over the region, and you would have photographs generally favorable for all severe weather hazards. Looking at the next day as well, you can see that general trough moves into the Midwest. You would have favorable moisture for, again, another round of severe storms. 500 millibar definitely does break down some, so you might not have the best severe risk. And then later in the week, Tuesday, we start to see another upper level trough that kind of comes into the region, nice low pressure, and we start to see these mesoscale days. And what we call mesoscale days are days with maybe 20 to 40 knots of flow in the mid-level, something like this color. This is a mesoscale day. You look for embedded short waves within the trough, which you can see with these squiggly lines here, and also differences in the wind barbs. And you look for those to play your storms that day, or if you're a resident meteorologist, look for those as heightened areas of severe weather. We can see that those short waves get a little stronger for the next day on this Euro run, hypothetical Euro run, and we can see that we have more like 40 knots of flow now. Your low level moisture is still very strong over the region. We can see that we have 60s, 70s dew points over a large region. And if we back this up with the EPS, it would generally agree. We'll first start looking at the EPS for Wednesday. I do think Wednesday is a day that might cat bust over the South Central Plains. We'll have to see. Depends on moisture and a lot of other stuff. The depth of the moisture. And also your dry line being further to the east wouldn't help at all to me. So I think Thursday is probably going to be a day where we're probably going to see the first bigger severe weather event occur. Probably would be over anywhere northern Illinois, probably. Maybe a little bit further south, but generally you're probably looking at somewhere here on Thursday for my analysis right now as the severe weather region with potential for all severe hazards. 850 millibar on the Euro has generally a 30 knot jet max over southwest Illinois with favorable synoptics for some severe storms. The next day on the Euro,
we see that on the Euro ensemble, we see that this threat moves eastward. It would be generally a more widespread severe threat and probably not as tornado and probably not really tornado driven, although you might see some tornadoes in a couple areas. You would have a large severe weather risk this day, probably over a giant area, something like that. I don't know. It would be too much to outline at this point. Then Saturday, we can start to see an upper level trough start to make its way back over again. We can see the Euro has a pretty big dip in the jet stream right here, which is signifying a trough. And we can see here that we also have another dip over the eastern US, but in a little bit of a ridge here. So this is just going to be a pattern where you get storm systems to kind of ride along it to the east. And we can see that's the deal with Sunday as well. Over the southern central plains as that dip gets closer. Sunday could be a day, next Sunday, or not this upcoming Sunday, but the Sunday after that could be a day to watch for severe weather over really anywhere in Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, areas like that. And then we can see that this trough hangs around for several days on the Euro ensemble model, and this would just make for a very favorable kind of a favorable look for severe weather over the same area for a few days. And we can see that this look kind of gets bigger, and we can see the trough kind of move back in, and then we see another little dip in the jet stream here. It's a little bit more elongated because of the ensemble model being a bit further out, but we can see that there's going to be an active period of severe weather kind of coming up over this region. So now I'm going to leave this to you guys if you have questions. I've been talking for the last 36 minutes about stuff, so people are new in here. They probably have questions. Maybe it's about your area, maybe it's just about something I talked about earlier. But yeah. I'll be out in storm chasing from the 19th, or getting out, leaving on the 19th, and then coming back on the 26th. So I have about a week out in the plains where I will try and observe severe thunderstorms and tornadoes, which is going to be fun. I have never chased west of the Missouri River before, so that's going to be fun to chase out there. I've been out there before, just haven't ever chased out there, so that would be fun. If nobody has questions, I'll wrap this up and move on. I'm gonna go to the bathroom in the meantime, and if somebody puts a question down, I'll answer it when I come back. All right, so I will wrap this up by kind of saying that overall, on my kind of thoughts, I have a graphic that I put somewhere that I kind of loosely made last night that I think would be kind of relevant for what I'm doing right now. So here it is. So this is a little graphic I made last night. It's a loose graphic, so don't really take it super serious. But kind of to wrap this thing up here, this is kind of my forecast for May 10th through the 31st, and this is highlighting tornado activity. So areas in yellow have definitely a chance to see tornadoes, but not super high. I'm not expecting those areas to be super active. And this is for the 10th through the 11th May, or not 11th, 31st. Areas in orange, you have an increased risk, in my opinion. Um, and this is based off years like 1990, 1996, 2013, 2015 that seem to be kind of aligning with the Indian oscillation pattern that we have ongoing right now, and kind of just the general troughing pattern as well. And 1996 was a strong analog to kind of begin the year as well. So, uh, Peoria probably not over the next few days, maybe next week. I'll kind of discuss that in a second though. And then so that's kind of how I made this graphic here. But areas in orange, you have an increased risk for tornadoes, at least in my opinion, over the next couple of weeks here, next few. And then red is where I think the highest activity is going to be. So areas like southeast Colorado, southern Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Um, I did discuss this earlier. You probably weren't here, but there is a threat of severe storms probably Thursday next week over central Illinois and areas near Peoria. I wouldn't say it's gonna. I'm not really super certain on whether or not we're gonna see too much of anything right now, but the general pattern is there. If we look at the upper air, we can see that there's a pretty strong trough that starts to move into the region Thursday evening. A lot of large scale ascent or defluence because of the difference of the wind barbs here. So you can see that there's going to be some lift that generally occurs over the region if the euro was to be taken seriously. We have moisture content that is pretty strong over the afternoon hours. Uh, So that would be something to kind of keep an eye on. But you can see that that moisture is going to push northward, and there's probably going to be storms that would try to develop in the afternoon hours if this solution were to happen. We're 150 hours out, and with the way weather models are right now, because of the lack of weather balloons, it's a lot harder to kind of determine that. Looking at a forecast sounding in the afternoon, though, we do have um, a lot of instability here that is outlined between the red and the white lines here above this dry layer, which I'll talk about in a second. Hotographs would favor severe storms with deep layer shear or just the general amount of wind energy we have being around 50 knots. But this dry air here in the mid levels could be something that keeps some areas dry and some areas wet. It kind of just depends on different circumstances with that and what happens. But generally speaking, there's probably going to be thunderstorms somewhere in Illinois and in that area Thursday afternoon. It's just where, how strong, and what the hazards would be. So that's kind of what we got now. Um, Probably gonna wrap this up here. Wasn't planning to do too long of a stream tonight, so um, that'll probably be it unless somebody has another question. Oh shoot, it's Callum. Oh Callum. Shoot, what's up, dude? Oh, you know what? I think I know who that might have been. Okay. What's up? It's just about to end it. Callum, do you have a question for me? Or uh dang, there's 4 people in here now. Okay, maybe we're not gonna end it. Let's see here. What else could I show? Stream was about kind of the severe weather pattern upcoming. And I also just kind of wanted to do it in general because I was a little bored. Give me a rundown. Okay, well uh I'll kind of show you this map right here. This is my thoughts on May 10th through 31st tornado activity. So areas in yellow, I think, have a fair shot at seeing tornado risk over this time period, but not like super high, more than normal for the time of the year. Orange is where you could have increased corridors of action, so that would be over kind of the Ohio Valley there, stretching into our area, and then up in the Missouri Valley / Northern Plains, down into the Southern Plains, and then red's where I think it's going to be most active in southern Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. Um, Given another little uh rundown here, this is upper level air, and this is something that weather forecasters and meteorologists use. We have a pretty strong low pressure system. This is Thursday next week, not Friday. Ignore this. This is in Zulu time, so that would be 7 p.m. Thursday. We can see that there is a pretty strong system that starts to move into our region Thursday evening, which could spark off some severe storms. Details on that aren't very once it loads. Dew points in the 70s, south of St. Louis, maybe coming up here. It's a little bit more uncertain because I think some ensemble members prog convection that forms in the afternoon over the central Illinois area, but generally speaking, dew points are going to be in the 60s, maybe low 70s Thursday afternoon and evening. Looking at the precipitation signal that afternoon and evening, there's definitely a signal for severe storms over, or not severe storms, thunderstorms over the region, which could be severe in turn. This is a little product here that combines the mid-level wind shear, the precipitation output, and the instability output. And you can see that there's a signal for severe storms from Wisconsin down into Oklahoma with this product, kind of with a couple increased corridors here over central Illinois and eastern Missouri, and then another one over Wisconsin. So that's kind of the rundown for what that product shows. Friday, it would be further to the south. Saturday, it would be further to the south again. Sunday, further to the south. So I think for Thursday next week's probably going to be the best shot at or yeah, Thursday next week would be the best shot at anything over our immediate area, and then maybe there would be something the next week, but that's more uncertain. Here's another model's take on that. We'll go over to Thursday. You can see this model has it more oriented in Wisconsin, but it does have a little bit kind of tracking down back into Oklahoma, but the highest quarter over Wisconsin. And then we can see the same general idea for Friday. It has Friday being a little bit further to the north from Michigan back into Illinois, over into Ohio. And then on Saturday, it has that corridor shifting south again. And then on Sunday, kind of just has everything staying further to the south. And that same general pattern keeps occurring where maybe Tuesday, Wednesday next week, there might be something further to the north that kind of creeps up again. So that's kind of the rundown here. If nobody else has questions, we'll probably end this. Um, so thanks for watching, everybody.